Thank you, everyone, for coming. When Toni asked me to be in conversation, I knew I was going to be in a room full of beautiful, kind, compassionate souls, because that is who is drawn to Toni. And so I thought, what better way to do my first in-person conversation reading than with fans and friends of Toni. So thank you for joining us. This is going to be a very casual, intimate conversation. I will ask some questions. Toni will answer brilliantly and then read even more brilliantly, and we'll just all be so in awe and stunned by it. And then she'll just keep talking and giving us her brilliance.
Lower that bar!
And then by the time we know it, it'll be all done, and we'll just be so stunned, and then we'll buy like multiple copies of the books and sell out here. So I have a tiny introduction to that I wanted to read for Toni. So I don't remember the exact year I met Toni because years just bleed into each other now, but I remember where we were. It was at Patricia Powell's house for our writers group, which Toni had just joined. And I remember immediately after our writers group meeting, texting my husband saying, I've met a wonderful friend already. I know we're going to be friends, and I like her so, so much. And I never do this because I dislike most people. So my husband knew, like, oh my gosh, she must be wonderful. And because I remember being struck by the joy and wonder in her. If you know her, like, everything just seems stunning to Toni. And when she sees something and sees the beauty in it, she encourages you to see the beauty in the world. And I was just so inspired and energized by her curiosity and appreciation of good writing and life. It made me want to read and write more with joy, just like Toni. Her writing is emblematic of her personality. It is generous, contemplative, funny, at times chaotic and bewildering, but always thoughtful and transcendent. I learn more about the world with every sentence I read from her. And I wish I could take credit for all the beauty in this story collection. But the truth of it is, I only had the privilege of reading a few of these stories before its publication. So reading this book in its entirety has been a revelation. And it reminded me of forest bathing. It is calming, enchanting, tender, and emotional. And I can always count on Toni to be a light of wisdom and kindness, especially during these times when it can feel so easy to be weighed down by darkness. So yeah, Toni.
It is painfully obvious you're talking about somebody else.
Make sure the mic's on. Is the mic on?
Is it on? Hello.
I gave you the tricky one.
Oh, the one. Oh, hello. Hello, Evan. Wow, you can. This is nice. I haven't used a mic in a long time. You can sound very brilliant this way. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to start with the first question.
All
Ready?
right.
Are you ready
Okay.
You ready to inspire us? Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us how you started this collection. What inspired these stories?
Okay. By the unnamed narrator, who is really different than me. So I think that what started it, there's something I do every morning, so I have prepared something here. There's something I do every morning. It's the oblique strategies, and from Brian Eno and Peter Schmidt. And who just did that? Yeah, Camden. Yes. And so, and I pick one every morning. It's how I start the day. And you have this any kind of dilemma that you start the day with. You pick a strategy card and then you apply it. And the one that I love a number of them, is once the search is in progress, something will be found. And I think that this narrator didn't know exactly what she was searching for, but she was searching for something. She didn't quite get it. She needed to find something. And there's a once on a telephone pole in Pacifica, the town that inspired a lot of this, I saw a sign tacked up. It said, "I've lost something. I don't know what it is. Can you help me find it?" And I thought, that's kind of what this book, how it was inspired and started, that the narrator had lost something. And she wasn't quite sure what that was. But so she went searching, but I don't think that she was even planning on a search. She just started taking some walks out in the world, and then came across people and came upon people who were extraordinary, though she didn't quite know that yet. They were strangers. And so I'm going to read a little start of something here. Oh, are you adjusting? Okay. Okay, let's see. So she's missing something, and this is the start to the central story, Spell Heaven. When you're lost and looking for a sign, an omen, a clue, when the wishbone doesn't yield the lucky stem, when you no longer believe in heaven or hell, past lives or future, yet still hope for a hint, some shred of evidence, a piece of shining raiment, a lucky card that blows your way, offering something, a way forward, an escape plan. Whether you're feeling down due to a recent slight, or a spate of misfortune, or the knowledge that melancholy has seeped into your bones, never coming in like gangbusters, but sneaking around the edges of the frame, a grayness that blankets the perimeter of the skin, then moves towards the center, the heart, the lungs, journeys to the center of your earth, enters and takes up residence, and after that you are no longer looking up and out at the horizon, so to that flat line you use to trace forward progress, a line as sharp as the ruler's edge, a line as an invitation, then it's down to the sea for a walk, to the sea, the cure-all, end-all. I make my way along the promenade that stretches the length of the beach. The sea, as usual, is making a show of it. Some days gray and moody, some days black and blue, some days mossy green, as if a lawn lay just under the surface. On others, a dusty, deep rusty brown of a red tide, a photoplankton flash mob. Sometimes the wind tears white bits off the top of each wave, sending hundreds of surrender flags into the air, but today it's mild, baby blue, with round, roly-poly waves that don't break in so much as slide into shore, hesitate, reconsider, then decide to slide back out again. If I hold up my hands, put the tips of my 10 fingers together, open that tented prayer, I can see create a box to see through. I place that fingered frame up to the horizon and try to recreate the captain's view. I want to find an equal balance of blue sea, blue sky, that calming, eternal possibility. My finger presses down on an imaginary camera button again and again. This frame, then this, try again, this shot, now this. Nothing enters the frame to alter that perfect ratio of sea and sky until something does. The pier, a concrete span, like a left-handed margin, left justified. And yes, I am justified in being here. At the pier's entrance past the flagpole, today the flag hangs as limp as they say it, as a dish rag, past the Chat and Shoe Cafe. There's a short flight of 3 steps, and you step onto the pier as if stepping onto a jet about to take off up and over the cabin door. Yet isn't there the slightest hesitation before leaving the known behind? A worry that flickers. Is this a good idea? Until you get nudged by a guy who bumps into you from behind with his crab cart. Sorry, lady, but damn, what are you waiting for? Christmas, get going. This morning something sends me back to the initial hesitation, that flickering worry. I've felt it before when I hesitated before taking that first step into the adult world and quickly stepped back. Or long ago, walking into kindergarten, about to enter the room with the chalk and the construction paper cutouts and the big toothy teacher holding the graham crackers and milk. Didn't I want to turn around? But I've grown tired of stasis. I'm looking for something to lift me. I want the catch to end all catches. And each day, like faith, still here. The pier, the sea, only out here, no worry to tie. Only out here, no worry to bind. Something urges me forward, as if towards some faint memory there, just beyond my reach. And just like that, I'm on. I take the first step on board and can feel the sway of the waves beneath me. This is as close as I'll get to the captain's day, suspended above the ocean. Every day the crew casts off and casts out and then waits and waits. It's possible, isn't it? Tell me it is. You can have a life where whatever you catch brings you joy.
Thank you. That was beautiful. And with the introduction to the narrator, I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about the creation of the narrator. I think a number of the stories makes reference to her past. We hear about her desires to be a sea captain, about her love for the sea, and we do get a few glimpses into her childhood, but I wondered if you could maybe give us a little more insight into the background of the narrator and how that influences and shapes the stories.
She's 5'4". She's Croatian American. And she grew up in a fishing family. She had many non-traditional jobs, and then she became a university teacher, teaching creative writing. She weighs a little less than I do. And therefore is radically different. I was thinking about this though, and she's an unnamed. I've seen some reviews that said the unnamed narrator, and I thought, oh God, we better give her a name. Mm-hmm. So I thought I would ask you. I mean, do you have a name? Do you have like a name we could just give her? Like, you could. Toni, did you say? Yeah, Antoinette. I was hoping for Peanut, but. Anyhow, no, there is a lot of similarity. And I think that the part of what happens to this narrator is that she's looking for meaning, she's looking for something, she's searching. And what she remembers is growing up in a world where there were these very big characters. She spent a lot of time on the fishing docks, and so she it was a world that couldn't be more different than an academic world, couldn't be more different. And there's something about a desire to return to that memory, that past, but you've got to actually, you're in a new place, so you're going forward and back almost simultaneously. There's a quote at the start of the book by C.D. Wright that I really love, and it says, "You will wake up in a dear yet unfamiliar place." So, in a sense, she's going back in terms of memory, and she's now on this beach, and things are triggered about the past, but there are all of these different strangers and new people, and they're reminiscent of something. They're reminiscent of a type of a spirit that people had, that, as I call, the art of bullshit. Mm-hmm. They know how to bullshit. Mm-hmm. They know how to tell a story. And there's something about both of those things going on. There's one other quote I thought of that I used to teach from W.G. Sebald about he's up on a cliff and there's these sand martins. Is that what they were called? Are those birds? Are they called sand martins? And he goes up on the cliff and there's holes that they have made their nests under the cliff, and he's standing there and he says, "I'm standing on perforated ground where I could fall into memory any second." And so, doesn't that feel familiar? You're in your present day world, and whether or not you're seeking something in the past in terms of memory, you see somebody's face and it's just like, oh God, that's it. I remember. You just fall into memory. So does that answer it? Mm-hmm. I think I went off, but go ahead.
No, that's wonderful. I do think the narrator is going through a journey, right? Especially moving into this community. And so much of the book is powered by the narrator trying to understand where she is, right? And who these people are around her. And so you get to meet an amazing array of characters and the people, your neighbors, the people coming through, the people at the Chit Chat Cafe, all of them. And so I wondered if you could talk to us about how you created these characters and if any of them were more memorable than others. And maybe who was your favorite character to write about?
Okay, I would like to ask you a question.
No.
Because here is a person who knows how to create characters. And my characters are inspired by real life individuals. But you in your books, you have created, you create characters. They aren't just people you know. How did you
This is her deflecting, by the way. Because you are creating characters, even if they're inspired by real life, right? You give them a voice, you give them life, you bring them to the page, you bring them to us as readers. So, who are your favorites to bring to the page?
Did you see? But was that fabulous? That was really nicely said. Hi, Aimee.
Answer the question.
Oh God!
Who are your
I hear
favorite
the
characters?
teacher in here. There are some favorite characters. There's a gentleman called the Crab King who's in his 80s and is kind of the ambassador of the place. And everybody knows the Crab King. Everybody knows him. And he's the guy who will say, "If I'm lying, I'm dying." He has an extraordinary way of making people feel comfortable around him. I love the Crab King. There's another man that I very much love and inspired by a real person. And in the book, he is Tommy Bench. And so he has found that drinking helps him through the day. And he is the man who at the one of the stories towards the end of the book says, I won't read the story, but just says, hands me a photograph of this beautiful young man when he was very young. And I'm looking at it thinking, who the hell is this? And he says, this is who I used to be. This is, I had a wife, I had a family, I used to work at Safeway. I had a pension. This is who I used to be. So to me, he's this character that it feels to me like I used to be. I used to drive a truck. I used to, I used to be a swimming pool operator. Those were jobs. I used to, it's like we have these other people in us who we used to be. Like, who were you? 10 years ago? You were not who you are, but you kind of carry that with you. And he's one of the characters, I think, that really made me think, like, I can see a guy who's drunk on a bench and think, well, there's a drunk on a bench. But I know nothing about that person. I know nothing about him. I know nothing about what his life was like until you find out, right?
Right.
Until you go sit by him. Mm-hmm. And then you find out, oh, well, he's carrying all those people too. And he is who he is today too. Was that another long answer?
No, it's wonderful.
Okay.
I think it's, when I say characters, I think also the way you approach them in the book is that they are these strangers who are no longer strange, right? These strangers who become familiar, who remind the narrator of things that she wants to relearn, she wants to remember.
So nicely put. They are strangers. Another quote that I love is by Toni Morrison, to vault the mere blue air that separates us. To vault the mere blue air that separates us. So what happens is these strangers, and you see people like, I was just out here, we were out there chit-chatting before the gathering tonight, and there were people that were walking by, and they were all strangers to me, but they were fascinating and interesting, and I didn't know much about them, and I have to I have to go beyond my natural hermit-like tendencies to move towards people that I would have assumptions about if I didn't get to know them better. So, and here's an example I use. There's, if you're walking along the beach, the first thing that happens is, and you know what this is like. You're walking along, and a person, you see a person, then you see him the next day. And so then you go like that, all right? And then they go. And then the next day you kind of go. And then they go. And then you say, hey. And the next day they go, hey. And then you go, how's it going? And then they say, well, it's going okay. And then you're off. And now suddenly there's a guy at the beach named, we call him Hollywood Superstar, because he's from the Ukraine, and he's when he sees the dogs, he thinks they're pretty dogs. He says, Hollywood Superstar, when he sees the dogs. And he now raises both of his canes up. And but then, that's one level of understanding and getting to know a person. And then you start to talk to them, well, this is what it was like when I lived in Odessa, and this is what my health is like now. And this is, suddenly then nobody's a stranger. Then you've really gone past it. But you had to get over your initial, I don't know, like, oh, gee, well, that one doesn't look like they'll like me. Mm. The guy who said to my loved one and I, go get married. Mm. And then I said back to him, small dicks, small minds. Mm. That didn't quite would bring us any closer. So you do have to work it out a little bit. You have to move with a good heart or something. I don't know, whatever. So.
What was the first story that you wrote in this collection? What inspired, kind of kicked off? Which character,
Actually, I think the first story was I'd come back from a residency and I was looking for this is this fictional narrator again. I'm so sorry. Whoever that person is comes back from a residency. She goes down to a place that looks very much like Princeton Harbor by Half Moon Bay. Looks a whole lot like it. And then she goes to the end of a pier where there's a crab place. And she talks to another fictional character and says, is there a place to write around here? Because I'm looking for a studio. And he gives her a place up in the above the crab pots and with all the crab boxes, and then she starts writing about and that's when a fishwife comes in and says, what's the difference between a fairy tale and a sea story? One starts once upon a time and the other starts this is no shit. So that, I think, started it, because I think the person was riding up there in the crab area, and these stories started. How about that?
Mm-hmm. And then they all started flowing, right? All the characters started coming out.
Yeah, okay.
Were there any stories that were harder to write than others? Or characters harder to approach?
There's some stories about the narrator's mother, and that are hard in terms of how they hurt the heart, just because she was a wonderful fictional mother. Mm-hmm. This is really getting old, isn't it? I'm sorry. Let's call them nonfiction stories. Anyhow, so that was hard. There's another character that's in the book that actually sometimes it's I'm going to tell this tiny story. It's there's a person we met at the beach who inspired a story, and she was from I'm going to ask my roadie, which is also my wife, where was she from? She was from Arkansas. And we started to do that thing, hey, 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 how you doing? Good morning, hey. And then we got a little closer. And it turns out that she wasn't very happy in this fictional town. And she was living with her gay son and his lover. And then as we get to know her, we get very close. And we find out she listens to Fox News. And that while she's living with her son and his lover, who are rainbow-haired and having a big time, and whenever we go by their house, there's the biggest rainbow flag you've ever seen in life is covering the house. In fact, it covers the entire house. And so the painful part was realizing that we didn't all agree and believe in the same things. And this is a story that isn't quite, that part of the story is in the book, something about her, where people are people. She wanted to go where people are people, she said. And then as the pandemic hit, she wouldn't wear a mask. And we were very nervous about the pandemic, and we wore masks. And so then there was this antipathy, and she would be on the other side of the street and would give us a look, and we would give her a look. So that was a hard character to write. And when the end of the story, because she has moved on, was that my loved one went over one day and said, how are you? And this woman said, I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for everything. And my loved one says, oh, we're bigger than that. It's okay. It's just beautiful. Ugh, I'm sorry, that's a long story.
No, that's great.
But that would be that's a hard character to write, where you recognize that, or another part of the book where my colleagues, I'm not so nuts about the academic world, obviously, in that you could tell in the book. And it's like, well, where's my empathy or understanding for people who have a hard time with politically in terms of academia? So, there's, you got to look at a lot of kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Well, that leads into, I think, one of my favorite questions I had listed here. And I want to give time if you have any questions too. But the pandemic did bring a lot of isolation and fear, and our senses of communities for a long time felt shut down. And this is a book about connections with strangers, about people connecting that normally wouldn't connect, right? So in that way, the timing of the book is really appropriate. So I wonder if the stories read differently or feel differently now, not post-pandemic, but on the other side of this,
yes,
this wave of it.
Well, they do, because there wasn't the fear about being close to people, or all the ways in which we've negotiated how we feel around safety and around, it's really changed things. So for a lot of this book, this person can go up to people and hang with them and sit on the bench with them. But maybe this would be, because just in terms of time, maybe this would be a good time to read one last piece from here. And then that might also kind of give a little understanding of the characters. Would that help? Would that be okay? There's a piece in here called Three Lessons, Four Scars. And the narrator's on the pier, and she is chatting with the Crab King. And a guy comes up, and he looks a little disheveled. And he says he's a surgeon. Doesn't look like a surgeon, but I'll go with it. It's good. And they're all out there. The Crab King's wife has passed away recently, and so I'm going to read a little bit about their encounter out there. And again, I don't think that this encounter might not have happened during the pandemic, but it does have something to do with what we're getting through obliquely. Okay, so they're on the pier, and the Crab King is going to say, the talk turns to accidents. The Crab King starts in. The other day I was in my garden pruning back some of the blackberry bushes. Those suckers will take over if you let them. So I took out this pair of shears. He holds up one hand, pretend he's grabbing hold of a pair of shears. And I must not have been looking, because I went to trim a branch and missed, and Good has sliced off my thumb. And with a closing grip, he slices the imaginary shears at his other hand and jumps back like he's really cut himself. He sticks his thumb out as if he's hitchhiking, and we're right there with him, going along, hitching a ride on his story. He shows us the evidence, a curved sickle slice across the fleshy pad of his thumb, a white line that cuts his finger into two halves, two puzzle pieces that fit together perfectly. I too have had an accident, said Lobo. I was in my garage building a dollhouse for my daughter. I was using a jigsaw. He stops and holds up his index finger, slightly bent, as if the top half is leaning towards what the next finger is whispering. An inch from the top, there's a white sliced line, a scar. Lobo is the surgeon. I cut straight through and the top came off. I picture the top half of the finger like a fleshy little hood lying there next to the jigsaw. Luckily, I had all the equipment in my medicine cabinet to fix it. Needles, bandages, antiseptic ointment. I went inside the house and sewed the tip back on. I look at his finger again. He's a very good seamstress. I tell him so and mention that at home I have some pants that need hemming. I stand there, staring down at their scars, unsure of what to say next, then realize I too have something to share. An operation I had 3 years ago when my fingers began to go numb. The doctor said I needed cubital tunnel surgery, that my ulnar nerve wouldn't stay put, had strayed and gravitated to a place where it wasn't supposed to be. During surgery, the doctor reattached the nerve, and while she had me under, performed carpal tunnel surgery on my right hand as well, a 2-for-1. I tell them my tale and try to make the operation sound a little more serious than it is. What I don't want to say is that the surgery is a result of sitting at a desk, staring at a small screen. Nothing as dramatic as a scar that came from a bar fight or a motorcycle crash or a winch coming down on a crewmate, which happened to a fisherman my father once knew. He used to say one slice to the head and he ended up dead. I lift my sleeve and there is the long white slice line along the arm, a curved tied line, and a crosshatch of lines on the underside of my wrist. I can tell they're impressed. They stare down at my arm, and I wish it were more muscular, that there was evidence of hard work, the ropey veins of my mother's arms from working in the tuna canneries, the hard turf of my father's arms from all those years fishing the Bering Sea. The silence grows long, uncomfortable. To fill it, I say, look at us. Here we are, like show and tell. We all have scars. We're showing each other our scars, which is stating the obvious. But I'm hoping our misfortunes will tie us together like a golden rope around our waists and make us kin. Lobo shakes his head. No, my friend, not our scars. We are showing each other our happiness. I give him a look like, okay, don't bullshit me. I'm not that green. Listen, here we are, he says. There's 3 of us on this day, on this pier. The sea is blue as the sky is blue as the sea. Where would we rather be than out here with all of our friends? A pair of shears, a jigsaw, the surgeon's knife, none of these could stop us. We have survived our scars, survived our mishaps, our slices and cuts and accidents. We are not showing each other our scars, my friend. We are showing each other our happiness. Here it is, the last lesson of the day, as if he's handed it to me on a bright silver platter. I look at Lobo, then over at Camo Man, at Oh Papa, at McDonald's. Mr. Econoline has made his way out here and is toasting someone with his bud. I remember the Crab King telling me that on any given day, if he catches 6 crabs or none, it doesn't matter. It's all time well spent, out here with his comrades chewing the fat, shooting the breeze, slinging the bull. And that's when it hits. That's when I know I've found them, my crew. This is my crew. My smelly, stinky, happy-making, motherfucking crew.
I think we're prepared for our Q&A portion, where members of the audience can ask Toni questions and she will continue to share her brilliance.
Yes. So if you have a question, I can make it to most of you, and will do my best. But if I can't, I'll just ask you to meet me halfway.
Hi. I want to know how you decided the order of the stories, because many of them are published separately in separate spaces and times, and so how did you come up with an order? I'm expecting a really good answer.
Okay. You know, Croatian. Malo po malo, malo po malo. Little by little. My grandmother would say, if you were depressed, go outside, see a little plant, get under the dirt, dig around, malo po malo, little by little. Little by little is how the collection grew, and it grew over a lot of years. So it really, the trajectory or the narrative arc really is that this person moves to a coastal town that was at one point down in the hills, and at now point is way not down in the hills, and slowly starts to get to know the neighborhood. Slowly, there's somebody here from the neighborhood. I can't tell you how happy that makes me. There's people we've grown up with who are here. It hurts my heart. It makes me so happy. So slowly over time, malo po malo, and as the stories go, Janine, you're asking about order. I guess they just kind of went like that. And then yeah, that would be a smart person who knew how to organize things in a really, really smart way. No, I think it was kind of like that. The one thing that is good is that I was talking about Tommy Bench. Patricia Powell, a wonderful new friend, once had read the story, that initial draft, and she said, why don't you go and sit next to the person? What about going and getting closer? So I think the order is that the narrator is not only getting closer to finding some meaning, and not only closer to finding a community, her smelly, stinking crew, motherfucking crew, is because as slowly over time, you're getting to know these people, and then she's finding what she was missing. She was missing connection. She was feeling, to put it really bluntly, she was feeling lonely. She was lonely. And the pandemic has certainly increased that. But, the loneliness starts to fall away. The other quote at the start of the book is, one by one, she let go of the things that fettered her. I believe that's it, from Jhumpa Lahiri. So slowly. So that's, again, another long answer, but that's what. I'll give you a really short answer if you want me.
Yeah.
I have a short, obvious question that I think we all know the answer to, probably. But let's say someone isn't here because maybe we buy another copy of the book or we pass ours along. You've got to read this. Can we just tell them it's a memoir? You've probably chosen to not have it marketed that way for some reason or another, but I don't know if you want to comment on this or not.
I believe in a great deal of fluidity, and that you can do whatever the F you want to do. So if you want to call it memoir.
But nothing's out of just your imagination.
Well, no, now I have to clarify. And that is that because actually while the town is inspired by the town I live in, that all of these characters really almost all of them are inspired by real people. I don't know them, and I have to imagine their lives. I have to imagine there's a woman who's obviously on drugs and has a young girl that she's kind of living within a car. And I know nothing about her. So the story, and in each story, that narrator has to not only imagine who those people might be or imagine the encounters, even the stories that are memory pieces from the past. I'm filling in stuff. I'm putting stuff in. So I'm ending a story in a way that is fictionalized. Though let me tell you, a whole lot of that, like that conversation on the pier, that's pretty close to that conversation on the pier. But still, so you can call it fiction, memoir, nonfiction stories. What do you want to call it? I'm going to do an old joke. Ghostbusters. I don't know. Call it.
I just call it Skull Heavy.
Ah.
There we go.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Another question?
Hi, Dan.
Well, first, I was reminded a couple of times of Grace Paley, particularly the Crab King, which to me is just lovely. But a really hard question. I think you made not a dichotomy, but a distinction between the academic world and the world that you grew up in. And I guess the question that came to mind is, how do people become inauthentic?
Authentic?
Inauthentic.
How do people become inauthentic? What a
Yeah.
good question.
Thanks. I was thinking about it all this time. So.
Is that a good question? Oh, help me. Help me, Rhonda. Help me.
I think we should go around the room and
Social media, virtual, I mean, that definitely has an effect.
Yeah, that's good. Okay.
What people put out there and the pretense of themselves, I don't know. Doing what they don't like to do.
Can we repeat what people are saying?
Please.
Yeah.
Doing what they don't like to do. Social media,
But also-
Twitter,
Putting out there
Putting-
something that is not really you.
Presenting a version of yourself that might not be true.
But is it all in the
Titles.
eye of the beholder? I mean, I don't think that the inauthentic person over there thinks of himself as inauthentic.
Doing a bad job with the mic, sorry.
Oh, I wanted to ask a similar question. I'm so struck, Toni, by your word choice today of antipathy, and I was kind of sad that I haven't read the book yet because I want to ask some big question about, not about COVID-19, but about the not getting alongness of these times on so many levels, some of them deadly. And so I think about, I have a lot of friends in my past, some of them back in San Pedro, that are hard right folks, and I don't want to lose them, right? But so I have to kind of play this empathy game that you seem to derive from your creative writing in order to kind of imagine them. So I think the thing that I love about people being inauthentic is the discussion, but I worry about even telling my hard right friend that he's not doing what he wants to be doing, because I know on some level that I probably don't have a say in that.
Yes.
I probably don't know. And so that's what I'm struggling with. But thank you. And you've got me thinking about people not getting along, but people kind of getting along, but people kind of not getting along. In spell heaven.
Well, and that's the thing, is that it doesn't stay on one. Like, you don't slowly get to know someone, and maybe even get to know them deeply, and then suddenly, it's just going to carry along merrily like that, and you're not going to have problems or ways in which you even sever relationships. This happens over time. That's more real to me than, you get to know a person and it's just happy days for the rest of your life. What do you think, Aimee?
No, I agree. I think that's these are things that we've just been thinking about more deeply, just the way we connect and the fact that we can't be polite anymore, right? About our beliefs about things because it's become so crucial
Absolutely.
to surviving.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say, and this is back to authenticity too, is that there's a way in which, and again, I don't know, Sarah, if this is also with social media in that way, there's a way that we're self-curating ourselves. That's the thing I've been coming up with lately, that you self-curate yourself with certain people, with when doing an interview, you present a certain self, and there's something that's hard about that, curating the self. Well, one, you aren't the most important person, and why do you want to curate a self that, yeah, anyhow, it's just something I've been thinking about lately.
If you're in a culture of everyone who's doing that.
Yes. Yeah. If you're in a culture
If
when
you're in a-
everybody's doing that.
If you're in a culture where everyone's doing that, yes, thank you. I was going to say maybe it's harder to keep track of the deeper narrative thread that is pushing your life forward if you're busy kind of presenting smaller threads on this person over here.
Exactly.
Hey, Toni. Oh my gosh. I was in Toni's writing class when I was an undergrad and a graduate student. It's exciting to be here. I don't want to drop this. Just wanted to ask about poetry, because when I knew you were writing back in the 90s, you were more of a poet. So I am psyched that this is a book of short stories, and I want you to talk about how you transferred from being a poet to a writer.
You know, somebody else was going to ask that question, and I said, oh, God, don't ask about poetry. I haven't done it in a long time. But listen, no, it's really good, because I found a poem in the book. I found a poem. Okay, hold on. Listen, it's real short. This guy is, somebody's staring at his beer bottle, and he's, Billy. And he stares at his empty beer bottle. He stares back down at his empty beer bottle, then he looks at me pleadingly. Can I help him out with what he's found? Can he help me out with what I've lost? Something not as tangible as a bracelet, a leash, a can of Bud, something key, what D.H. Lawrence called the quick. If I were to give voice to this lostness, this is how it might come out. I've lost the thread, the quick, the spark, the easy breath at midnight's dark. I've lost the way, the path, the road. I've lost the field and seed I've sowed. I've lost a rudder straight and true. I've lost myself, and I lost you. I've lost why I was set down here. Live wire, flat tire, strange one, queer. I lost a thought to save the day. I lost my line, my swing, my sway. Where to look for what I've lost, in what cold corner, what hot pot, in which stray pocket of jumble mind, where's a through line I can find, what voice or soul or breath or ease, where can I find what I now need? So it was so when I talk about poetry and changing to prose, I think you take, it's not my phrase, but I really love it, a bag of needments. You take things from one genre, and they kind of like, this is who I used to be, that same thing. Well, I used to be that poet, so the repetition and the imagery and stuff is just coming along. It's still coming along, and so you can't kind of get rid of it. It's who I used to be, so it's in there too. I will tell you that the very first graduate class I was in at San Francisco State, and I had gotten into the program, it was poetry. And I wrote a poem, and it was in rhyme. And a man across the table in the workshop said, "Nobody rhymes anymore." And I wrote a rhyming poem every week of that semester.
Another question? or
Hi, Tony. You've mentioned a couple of times about this idea of someone being who they are now, but also who they were in the past.
Yes.
How do you deal with that as a writer, and how do you also deal with that as if they're in conflict with who they are now as to who they used to be?
Yeah. Well, that's the best. That's a great thing, isn't it? I mean, I don't mean it's comfortable to be in conflict with who you used to be, but I do think that that's just right at the heart of it. You used to be someone, and you used to. I just think that that's the type of internal contradictory conflict that we have. That we were one way, or we believed this way, or we had these relationships, and then you're changing through time, and you're older, and you feel like a different person. As you can see, I'm a little, how should I say? I don't have a clear answer to that one either. It's just simply that I think that the people that we used to be are still in here, and that the conversation that you end up having with that person that used to be is really interesting. It isn't solvable, though. Can you help me?
You don't need my help. You're doing great.
But I mean, can somebody help me?
But as a writer, how do you deal with that, like, in the process of writing, keeping that idea of this person? Keeping this idea of this person who was all these things, and translating that for the audience.
I don't know. I don't know.
It's okay. I'll find out in the book.
I don't know. Shotzi, do I know?
I'm pretty sure the unnamed narrator knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. The unknown. Yeah, get her up here. Yeah.
Another question or answer to that question?
Hi, Toni.
Hi, Harriet.
You say you have conversations with the person you used to be. Do you
Yes.
have conversations with the person who you want to become or you will be? Because age is a thing. You just said yourself. We're the same age. So. I think I may be older, but that's
No,
but I wonder about that.
No, I think that's really interesting. I think here's this is something from the personal life that isn't about the narrator, but it might be instructive. So my loved one and I have a conversation every week with my ex and his wife. And every week we have a date, and we Zoom date, and we chat. And so I'm able to revisit with a person who knew me in the 70s, and we can share, oh, do you remember that? And our loved ones love each other too, so everybody's having a big old time. I mean, it's a very wonderful, wonderful relationship that we're having. But it's in the present. We're in our present lives, but there's then the possibility that someone actually not only knew you but can even fill in things. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary, and that's when did that, and yeah. But in terms of going forward, God, I don't know. I mean, I don't like what you imagine. I imagine taking a walk tomorrow. I imagine letting the dogs out when we go home because they have to pee-pee. I mean, I imagine. I don't imagine very far now. It's kind of like I imagine that if I see Jack tomorrow at the beach, and he comes over to give the dogs a treat, and we laugh, and he tells us that he used to own a bar across from San Francisco General. And if Mary comes by, who's an Irish nurse in her 80s who moved to the Haight when she first moved here from Ireland, I imagine that tomorrow might be a day when those kind of things will happen. And then it's just like, that's about as far as I can go. Do you imagine into the future?
I think that's a beautiful image for us to linger in our head. Thank you, Toni. Thank you.
I was telling Aimee, I just have to say, I was telling Aimee that when I was surprised that this book came out and was taken, it was a very wonderful thing, happy making. But one was that I love Evan, and I wanted to have the book here, and that made me very happy. And then I wanted to be with someone. I'd never done an in conversation, though we converse a lot. And I wanted to be with somebody that I admire and that I felt totally comfortable with and was wonderful, and that's Aimee Phan. And also then I just have to really, really thank, there are so many people in this room that I love. It's very nice of you to come.
Thank you all so much.